Ever get that feeling? Like you're drowning in a sea of just, well, meaningless chatter.
Oh, yeah.
Surrounded by all these words, but none of them are actually, making any sense.
Totally.
Well, get ready. Because today, we're taking a deep dive into the bizarre world of Jabberwocky.
Jabberwocky.
Yeah, it's meaningless speech you're writing. But the thing is, it can actually teach us a lot about how we communicate.
Huh. That's interesting. I never really thought about it that way.
We're going to be exploring a fascinating piece called The Power of Jabberwocky, Finding Meaning in Nonsense.
Okay, now that sounds like a bit of a paradox, finding meaning in nonsense.
Exactly. And that's what makes this so intriguing. Ready to dive in?
Absolutely, let's do it.
So first things first, what exactly is Jabberwocky?
Well, I think the most famous example is that Lewis Carroll poem, right? Jabberwocky. Full of words like brillig and slighty toes.
Bandersnatch.
Yeah, exactly. Pure gibberish.
Right. But even though it's nonsense, there's something about the rhythm of it, the way it flows, that kind of makes you want to understand it.
I know what you mean. It's almost like our brains are programmed to find patterns, even when things are totally chaotic.
It's true. And it's not just poems, right? It happens in real life, too. I remember this one time I was at this conference, and the speaker, this keynote speaker, was just throwing out all this jargon.
Oh, yeah.
And I swear it was like listening to a completely different language. I was so lost.
Unintentional Jabberwocky. We've all been there, right? Stuck in a conversation where it's like, what are they even saying?
Totally. But here's the thing. Our source makes this really cool distinction. They talk about how sometimes we actually create nonsense on purpose.
Deliberately.
Yeah. Think about it, giving your friends silly nicknames or just making up rhymes for fun.
Okay, I get it. So intentional versus unintentional Jabberwocky.
Exactly. So I guess the question is, if the unintentional kind is like a communication breakdown, what can we learn from the times we do it on purpose?
Well, the source points out that when we play with language, even in a nonsensical way, we actually start to understand its structure better and its limitations.
Oh, that's so interesting. So it's like by breaking the rules, you actually learn how they work.
Exactly. Think of comedians, for instance. They use wordplay all the time. Puns, yeah, or poets who create this abstract imagery. It's like they're bending language, almost breaking it, to create a whole new meaning or to evoke a certain emotion.
I've honestly never thought about it like that, but that makes a lot of sense. So you're saying even nonsense can be a form of expression?
Yeah. A way to connect with other people, to be creative, to be funny, to make people think.
I love that.
Yeah.
So I guess the next big question is, what does this all have to do with communication in, the real world, the non-nonsense kind?
Well, the source makes this really interesting point. They say that when we're passionate about something, about an idea, we're more likely to push past that fear of not saying things perfectly and just express ourselves.
You mean like that feeling when you're trying to describe something and the words just, won't come out right?
Exactly. But, and this is important, the key is to not let that fear stop you from speaking up.
So you're saying it's okay if what we say isn't always eloquent, that we shouldn't be afraid to put ourselves out there.
It's not about being perfect. It's about having the courage to be vulnerable, to realize that language is constantly evolving, and our ideas, they're evolving too, right?
So it's all a process. And it's okay to embrace the messiness of it.
Exactly. The messiness is part of the magic.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about Jabberwocky, both the intentional and the not so intentional. But for our listeners out there, what's the takeaway here? How can they use this in their everyday lives?
Well, I'd say the next time you come across Jabberwocky, whether it's someone using jargon that just makes your head spin.
Or a piece of art that, seems to defy all logic.
Yeah, exactly. Just pay attention to how it makes you feel. Is it frustrating? Is it intriguing? Is it funny? Does it make you want to dig deeper?
Because sometimes even nonsense can spark a really meaningful conversation.
Precisely. And what does that tell you about the person communicating? About their intention, their personality, or even, the limits of language itself?
See, there you go. Even nonsense can give us something to think about.
Exactly.
It's all about perspective, right?
Absolutely.
So next time you find yourself swimming in a sea of Jabberwocky, remember, there might be more to it than meets the eye.
You never know what gems you might uncover.
And that's a wrap on another deep dive. Thanks for listening.
See you next time.